My guest is on hold. Let us say hello to Gerald Celente. Nice to have you with us today, Gerald.
Hey, Happy New Year, Gary.
Gerald, we're going to come to you in just 2 minutes, as promised, but I have 2 commentaries I wanted to share that to get you to respond to these, all right?
Shoot.
One is from Professor Roderick Tremblay, who you know, and I'll quote just part of it. Here's what he says. From Benjamin Franklin. They who can give up essential liberty to obtain a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. In 2049, when the 100th anniversary of the publication of George Orwell's political novel 1984 will be celebrated, it will be recalled that the immediate post-September 11, 2001 period marked the beginning of a gradual decline in personal liberty, freedom, and especially in the United States, but also everywhere, and the emergence of a great information-obsessed Leviathan. Freedom rarely disappears in one fell swoop. Its disappearance is rather the end result of 1,000 encroachments. Pushed to the extreme and without clear democratic oversight, it becomes the mark of a totalitarian state. When authorities feel that they never have enough information on the people that they govern, it is because information is power and state bureaucrats and politicians naturally like to be in control. On the other hand, releasing as little information about their own actions through an imposed secrecy, on the other accumulating as much information as possible about the citizens. And today, modern governments have all the tools to transform their country into a creeping police state, more so now than ever before in this electronic age. They have access to information technology and previous full-fledged police state governments could only have dreamed about. And then he goes on to talk about how in the United States we are absolutely now becoming a police state, and he gives really good examples. Do you remember Vice Admiral John Poindexter in 2002 proposed that the United States government create a tracking and monitoring system for all Americans called Total Information Awareness in order for the U.S. government to gather information in a preventative way, they claim, about individuals, and they want to know everything about the person, your tax records, your telephone calls, your credit card charges, banking transactions, airline shipping, everything they want to know about you. Well, how about this? There's clear signs that this massive data mining system on individuals is now solidly in place and is in full operation, can be expected to grow over time. So George Orwell was correct. And finally, first Department of Homeland Security's network of fusion centers launched in 2003 has allowed the government to centralize a host of previously disparate information about American and foreigners alike. And as a result, you think you have privacy, you have none. And the government wants to know everything about you all the time and insists it's their right. Could you deal with this area and show us what you believe is the current state and the trend that this is like to go in about becoming a police state, a totalitarian state, and virtually not allowing any form of protest about anything in the United States?
Well, it's going to be one of our top trends for 2011, loss of liberty. And it's being written by Paul Craig Roberts for the Trends Journal. He was the former Assistant Secretary of Treasury under Ronald Reagan. And when you look what's happening, it's right in front of us. They now have drones flying over Miami-Dade County, the police do, peering in people's windows. Afghanistan's come to the USA. They're also doing it in Houston. And who's watching the people that are watching us? That's what I always want to know. And let's look one step further. We just saw our Homeland Security czarette, Janet Napolitano, making a speech employing Walmarts to watch us. And people shopping at Walmart to, if they see anything suspicious, to call the authorities. Or they see anything suspicious outside, she says, Homeland Security starts in your hometown. Sig Heil, Air Napolitano. I mean, when you look at the video on YouTube, hearing her saying what she has to say, the only thing missing is a German voice. what's happened to this country. And as you said it, with the quote from Benjamin Franklin, the people who don't stand up to protect their liberty deserve to lose it. So we're going to look at loss of liberty as a major trend in 2011.
Okay, now let's look at the next one. And a few sentences here from Jeffrey Smith, one of the leading environmentalists in the world today. Quote, "Remember the pictures of the fish tomatoes? For years they were an unofficial emblem of the anti-GMO movement. They depicted how antifreeze genes from an Arctic fish were forced into tomato DNA, allowing the plants to survive frost. Scientists really did create those Frankenstein tomatoes. Now they have something else. They took some other DNA, and the FDA's shady approval process of the Flavor Saver tomatoes, and this is a lesson for us. And here's what he says. It says, the bleeding stomachs. Calgene, the tomato's creator-in-chief and now part of Monsanto, voluntarily conducted 3 28-day rat-feeding studies. Before I share the gory details, I must commend the Calgene scientists who were committed to transparency and full disclosure with the FDA. Unlike all other subsequent voluntary submissions from biotech firms into the agency, Calgene provided detailed feeding study data and full reports. Now, they did 2 separate studies. They had 2 identical tomatoes. Both had the same gene inserted into the same type of tomato. The process of insertion and subsequent cloning of the cells into genetic modified plants can cause lots of unique outcomes. The rats that ate one of these Flavor Saver varieties probably wish they were in a different test group. Out of 20 female rats, 7 developed stomach lesions and bleeding in the stomach. The rats eating the natural tomato had nothing happen. Then they studied the documents a little more carefully and find out that rats died. A Dr. Puzatzi, who reviewed these, found what the FDA scientists did not. He found that in the 7 out of 40 rats fed these genetically modified tomatoes died within 2 weeks. So we had 7 out of 40 die, and then we had another group that ended up with bleeding of the stomach. And yet the FDA still is in a position to support genetically modified food. Your thoughts about, now that we don't have any more organic movement, it'll be completely destroyed within the next 2 years, and all we're looking at now is everything genetically engineered in the United States, all courtesy of the FDA and the Obama's passing of Senate Bill 510. Your thoughts?
There is no FDA. It's a front for the food industry, agribusiness. There are no government agencies at all out there, and it's not a revolving door where the people come from business and go into government, or leave government and go into business. It's just one door. It's called the Wall Street door, and it's open to the big corporations and the oligopolies. So there is, again, it goes back to that Benjamin Franklin quote. It's not only we're losing a loss of liberty, we're losing our lives. And as you point out, there isn't going to be an organic movement, and I assume you're referring to the Senate Bill 510. Is that correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is the way all of this legislation works. I listen to these liberal weenies out there, all in support of Senate Bill 510, without knowing the facts about it and not knowing what legislation really means. These laws are put on place to screw the little people. It's as easy as that. You go back to Gary when they recalled half a billion eggs in 2010 from that Auschwitz Farms out there, that chicken coop concentration camp in Iowa. How many times was the FDA out there in the last year? None. And what is Senate Bill 510? Who do they protect? Well, there's no regulations against big poultry or big meat. So this is just another one of the nails in the coffin, literally, that the Obama administration and by the support of his liberals out there and progressives that continue to believe in change we can believe in and hope, that support him. And one of my sayings is that conservatives believe and liberals lie. Conservatives believe things like, we got to get rid of all those Islamo-fascists, let's bomb Iran and let's bomb Afghanistan and send them back into the Stone Age. They're actually stupid enough to believe that stuff. The liberals lie. They won't call a spade a spade. They will never admit that they've been conned by the con man in chief, the head of the presidential reality show, Obama. So rather than call them out on all of these atrocities that he's committing through legislation, whether it be with Senate Bill 510 and others or the wars, they keep giving him a free ride. So and they're intellectually intelligent enough to know that they've been conned. They just don't have the spiritual or moral strength to admit so. So until they speak up, nothing will change. That's the key audience that has to change.
All right. Now let's look at something that is based on the laws of unintended consequences. You cannot have massive poverty that we currently face and getting worse, and on the one hand have virtually everyone on television saying how good things are. Look at the stock market. We had this enormous increase. We're up to 12,000. Everybody is just bringing out the champagne, and yet where I've been filming, people who had jobs, college educations, are literally living in destitution. That to me means you've got to look at the opportunity for crime. No jobs, no money, nothing to lose. As you say, when you have nothing to lose, you lose it. Compounding debt, high stress. Then what is the likelihood that we're going to see an epidemic in crime in the United States, mainly in teenagers, and virtually ghettoize the suburbs of the United States?
It's very high. 1% of the U.S. population controls more than 90% in assets and wealth. What's happened to this country? The gap between the rich and the poor is the widest in the U.S. of any of the industrialized nations. Sound like a third world nation to you? Those are one of the symptoms of third world life.